This is topic C on page 87, watching and evaluating formulas. When you develop and work with workbooks that contain large numbers of complex functions or that have a lot of interconnected cells, it becomes tricky to fully troubleshoot and resolve all problems. For example, if the errors in a function are being caused by multiple cells throughout the workbook, it can become tedious to find the offending cells, resolve the issues in them, and then navigate back to the function to check to see if the change is reflected there. Or you may encounter errors in highly complex functions with numerous levels of nesting and multiple other functions as arguments. In such complicated functions, it may not be immediately clear precisely what is causing the issue. It could be an error in entering a function or its arguments, an error in a precedent cell for any argument in any of the nested functions, or any number of other issues. At first glance, it could be nearly impossible to determine what part of the function is truly the problem. Although you could painstakingly scour your worksheets to determine if the changes you're making reflect in all connected cells, or break down complex functions to determine precisely where an issue is coming from, you likely don't have that kind of time, and who would really want to do this anyway? Fortunately, Excel provides you with a couple of powerful tools that can help you watch formulas and their results and to break down complex functions argument by argument to hone in on the issue. It's easy to see how this type of automated help can save you a ton of time, numerous headaches, and a lot of effort. So first we'll take a look at our watch window. And the watch window is a floating pane that you can either move around the screen or dock within the Excel user interface above the formula bar. To open it, I can go to my Formulas tab of my ribbon, and in my Formula Auditing group, here I have the command for watch window. So you can see mine automatically opened up, and I'm going to minimize it a little bit here. It's taking up a lot of room. It's automatically docked into place above my formula bar. And if I wanted it actually floating in place, I could pull that out, and you can see it's a floating window. That's just by clicking and dragging the title bar there. Bring it up top, and it docks into place again. So you can add any cells you want to the watch window. For each cell that you add to it, the watch window displays the cell's location, its displayed value, and if it contains one, the formula or function entered into it. As you update the values or other formulas and functions in the precedent cells for cells in the watch window, the cell's information updates in real time. This ensures you don't have to navigate through or across workbooks to see the effects of updating information or correcting errors. So to add a cell or range to the watch window, here I have a button for Add Watch, and you can select the cell or range input to this field. So I'm going to, just for example purposes, I'm going to select cell F4 and add that to my watch window. Now you can see it lists, let me expand these, it lists the workbook name, so this is the Chapter 2 Excel workbook. It will list what sheet that the cell is located on, which is my sales worksheet. If it has a defined name range, it will have that listed. The cell reference, F4, the value that it currently has right now, 10,119. That's the result. And it will also show you the formula that's input there as well. So here I have the sum of B4 through E4. Now, again, for example purposes, let's say that I have cells on other worksheets that are feeding into this cell for its formula, to calculate its formula. Now, obviously, the cells that are feeding into it are on the same worksheet as F4 right now. But if other cells on other worksheets were feeding into it, and I wanted to keep an eye on F4 and see how it changes when any of the other cells are updated. If I made that change in my precedent cells and watching when I press enter here, it's going to show me in live time the update of that. So you can see once I updated cell B4 that's feeding into it, it shows me the value 85,574. So again, if they were on different worksheets or different workbooks, you wouldn't have to navigate back and forth to take a look at the change. You could just keep that cell on watch in your watch window. Okay, so that's what that's used for. And I'm going to close that out from the top of my screen. Now we also have an evaluate formula dialog box. When you need to correct errors in large complex formulas or functions, it's helpful to break them down into their component parts, their function arguments or elements of formula expressions, to examine each chunk by itself. And this process is known as formula evaluation. Performing this type of task manually can be a painstaking, time-intensive process, but you don't have to do this manually. Excel's evaluate formula feature can do this for you. When you evaluate a formula in Excel, Excel breaks the formula or function down into its component parts, runs the calculation on each part one at a time, and displays the result of that calculation to you in relation to the rest of the larger formula. So for example, if I did the evaluate formula command on cell F4, to do this I select my cell, go up to my formulas tab, and in my formula auditing group, here I have the command evaluate formula. So it's going to show the formula here, and the underlined portion is going to be the next step that this dialog box evaluates. Now some functions are very complex, so they do it step by step by step. So this is just going to evaluate the whole thing at once. When I hit evaluate, gives me my result of 85,574. So this is a very simple function. Now, if I was to select, let's see, here we go. Here's a little bit more of a tricky one. Cell H4, and this is using a VLOOKUP. If I go to my evaluate formula, it's going to list the whole entire function for me, and you can see the underlined portion is the first segment that's going to evaluate. So G4, this is my lookup value. Well, what does G4 represent? Represents $85,000. So when I hit evaluate here, it's going to show me $85,000 implemented into that argument. So it breaks it down and shows you step by step on what it will be completing. So then it's going to evaluate the whole entire function now to give you the result, which should be 10%. How about this one? This is an error message. If we evaluate this, shows us this is taking the average of F3 plus F6. So F3 is my first argument that it's going to evaluate. F3 actually has the text of year total. So now it moves on to evaluate what F6 is, which is 12,485. So I can see the next step that the function is going to evaluate is adding the text year total plus 12,485. Now obviously you can't add text and numbers to get a figure, so when I evaluate this, it's going to show me that that is where that error is being thrown here. So obviously I would want to go back and correct this. Maybe I meant to put F4 plus F6 or whatever the calculation, but obviously you would not have text plus a numerical figure because that would throw an error message. So that evaluate formula feature is very handy for seeing exactly where an error message might be thrown for a function. Your next video will be Activity 4.3 on page 90.